welcome. My name is Chris from ChristopherHole.com. Welcome to today's podcast, where we're going to be answering the question, what is functional exercise, or what is functional training? This is something that gets used in the fitness industry when it comes to exercise as a way of advertising what a trainer or what a coach does in the way of selecting exercises and so forth. It also gets used as a way of saying it's better for the body. We want to use functional training as a way of making the body better, if you will. So what we're going to do is we're going to explore this subject. We're going to bring a bit of more of a perspective to what functional exercise and functional training is by first looking at where it came from, if you will. So we're going to sort of delve into the history of exercise. Then we're going to understand what function is. And then finally, we're going to sort of build maybe a different perspective of what functional exercise and what functional training is as a way of programming for you, the general public. And before we get into that, just quickly mention my social media. Please come along to Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. On Facebook, it's Christopher Hole Training. Just type that in and please like the page. Or you can go to Twitter or Instagram, which is at Christopher Hole. Again, come along and follow. It'd be great to have you on there. I can answer any questions that you do have, keep you up to date with what's going on at Christopher Hole Training. Alternatively, you can come to the website, pop your name and email address into christopherhole.com/join and join the monthly newsletter, which is jam-packed full of more information like this. Other questions are being answered, blogs, videos, so on and so forth, that you can get your hands on, learn more, gain more knowledge, and ultimately improve your health and fitness. So coming back to today's podcast, what we are looking at is what is functional exercise or functional training, if you will. So again, we are going to look at, first of all, a little bit of a history of exercise, very much a whistle-stop tour. But if we go way back, thousands and thousands of years, we first used exercise for military purposes, if you will. So when we were somewhat nomadic, we would be in these little clans or these little tribes, and when we came across another one, if we couldn't communicate effectively with them, it may turn into some degree of aggression and fighting and so on and so forth. So as tribes became domesticated and wanted to take over land and things like that, they would then start training for military purposes. So, things like running, throwing, and certain wrestling and fighting and so on and so forth. So it all started out that way. What then started happening is, as we became, let's just say, a little bit more civilized, what started coming off the back of the military training was competitive or competition. And then what started coming off the back of competition was sports. And then what came off the back of competition and sports was what we kind of know as exercise today. Now, how we sort of understand sort of sport to be is, or training to be for sport, are things like bodyweight training. Gymnastics is a very old and probably the oldest form of physical activity that we know of. You've got bodyweight training, you've also got free weights, and what then started evolving is sort of bodybuilding, if you will. That's, I guess, the best way to describe it. So training for a better physique. So this isn't necessarily the original type of exercise, but it came along. So what then started happening is, in order to gain a better physique, the people partaking didn't necessarily want free weights or gymnastics or bodyweight training to be able to do that. They wanted to isolate muscles a lot more. So they then developed these machines. The machines to develop specific muscles. So the quadricep muscles, the biceps, the triceps, the pectorals, so on and so forth, because they wanted to enhance the body. Now, what's happening today is we're now starting to shy away from the machine weights. And we're starting to now go back to where we originally came from, which is free weights, bodyweight training, gymnastics. They've always been there, but they've not been held in as sort of big regard with regards to the fitness. So it sort of started out in that way. It then faded out and machines came in for bodybuilding, and now that's starting to not necessarily fade out, but the body weight, gymnastics and free weight is now becoming or taking a much stronger hold in the industry. So there's a sort of a quick whistle-stop tour of the history of I guess exercise. Now, when it comes to functional exercise, at the moment, coaches and trainers perceive the more, let's just say, natural movement to be functional, if you will. And to a degree it is, but we're going to explore and expand on that as we go through this podcast. So what we are currently looking at is we're moving away from machines because we're saying they're not functional, they're not good for you, and this type of movement is good for you. And to a degree it is. But what we have to understand first is the human body. So we're going to now answer the question, what is function? Because what we aren't doing is we don't want to do the exercise for the exercise's sake. We're doing exercise to enhance our body in some way. So it might be to enhance our movement. It might be to enhance our body composition. It might be to minimize risk of injury or whatever whatever we're in exercise for. So first of all, we've got to understand that. What is someone's function? So if we just strip away everything and just look at the human being, as a human, we have the potential for many functions. So we've got everyday life, we've got sports, we've got work, etc., etc. We've got everyday activity, if you will. So that requires squatting, lifting, bending, pushing, pulling, walking, rotating, carrying, running, in all multiple different directions. It means potentially lifting up our own body weight in some way, shape or form, through a squat, through a push-up, through a pull-up, whatever it may be. So once we understand that that's our function, what we can then do is start wrapping around exercise to enhance that function. Because a lot of trainers at the moment are saying functional exercise is some sort of method of training. So if you look at natural movement, it's about running through a forest, crawling along a fallen tree, jumping off, and then carrying on running. Now, our body has the ability to do that. That's absolutely true. But for most people in everyday life, that may not be that natural for them, if that makes sense. Or it may not be that useful for them, if that makes sense. So what we aren't trying to do is we're not trying to take a person and say you need to do natural movement, or you need to do gymnastics, or you need to do free weight training. What we're saying is, here is the human body, here is its function, how can we enhance that? What methods of training can we use to enhance that? Can we use free weights, dumbbells, kettlebells? Can we use gymnastics? Can we use body weight? Can we use natural movement to enhance the movement that we require for everyday life or our sport or whatever it may be? And that's how we need to reframe functional exercise. Is it's not one method, it's our body has this function, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring in a little bit from gymnastics now. I'm going to bring in a little bit from Pilates. I'm going to bring in a little bit from yoga. I'm going to bring in a little bit from bodybuilding. I'm going to bring in a little bit from gymnastics or whatever it may be to enhance that movement. Because if we are talking about being able to lift our own body weight, we wouldn't necessarily start with just doing a pull-up. We might start with a weights machine, which a lot of people are saying isn't functional. But what it can lead us to do, it can lead us to become more functional, because it's a stepping stone on to being able to do a full pull-up, if that makes sense. The same with the push-up. When I work, and I don't mean to sort of stereotype, but when I work with a lot of females, they have problems doing push-ups. Now, this is a general trend. There are males that have problems with that, but in a general population, it's the females find it a lot harder. So what I tend to do is I tend to use free weights. I don't tend to use machines that much, but I tend to use free weights, but getting them led on their back, pushing a weight in a bench press or in a dumbbell press to be able to enhance the strength of their upper body alongside maximising the push-up pattern. So it's not me saying, right, your natural birthright is to push your own body weight up only using your body weight. That's not the question that I'm asking and then saying, right, you must do push-ups. What I'm saying is you have the ability to do a push-up. It's useful for your body to have that ability. Therefore, I'm going to use as many parts of exercise to enhance that as I can, depending on who you are, what you do, what range of movement you have, what flexibility you have, what past injuries you've had, so on and so forth. So I'm not looking at an exercise method for the answer. I'm looking at the human body for the answer and then fitting exercise to it. So to, in some ways, summarize what is functional exercise is an outcome. It's not a method of exercise. So what we have to do is we have to fit exercise to our function rather than fit our function to an exercise, if that makes sense. So hopefully this has sort of brought a little bit more to your understanding when it comes to functional exercise, when it comes to choosing what exercise method to use, because I know a lot of people and a lot of fitness trainers are out there saying that theirs is the best way of doing it, which, you know, in some respects it could be for the right person at the right time. But what I've found in working with people is that when you work with them individually, is they need parts of all of it, rather than just one method to say natural movement is the way to go. No. The body is more adaptable than that. It needs all of these parts. They all serve a purpose to be able to enhance our function and live everyday life and complete the sport that we want to complete more effectively. So hopefully that's brought, again, as I mentioned, a bit more of a perspective to functional exercise, what it could be or what it is. And hopefully you're able then to go into gyms, into the fitness industry on its own and sort of gain more from it rather than be necessarily a victim of it, if you will. Many thanks for listening. My name is Chris from ChristopherHole.com. I will speak to you in the next podcast.